Hello, hello and welcome to our next issue of the Psychedelic University program. Newcomers will get the intro. For those who don't know, this is a series of talks highly specialized within the field of psychoculture. And the element of fire represents the bridge between psychedelics and spirituality in a very practical way. And for that particular reason, we have an expert within our ranks, with, among other things, also a transformative coach, scholar, and most importantly, psychonaut and chaos magician. And what that means will be known to you in a couple minutes from now. I will, from now on, give this microphone to one and only Mariana Pinstone. Please welcome her with an applause.
Welcome all. Thank you for joining us tonight at the Psychedelic University. As Mars already said, we're trying to cover 4 different elements also at our talks at the Psychedelic University. The element of fire being policy and activism, the element of air being science and art, the element of water being the healing arts around psychedelics, and fire is the element of spirituality and magic. So it is my pleasure today to introduce you to some fire. And we're going to be talking about balanced psychonautics, which is a framework I'm developing myself for exploration of consciousness and integration work of psychedelic trips, based on Timothy Leary's 8-circuit brain model. Before I go diving all deep into this framework and this model, and be prepared because it's a load of information, I want to frame this talk a little bit by a personal story. I'll let you know a little bit of how I came to discover this model and why I think it's so useful. So, back around in 2017, when I was starting my novitiate into chaos magic at the IoT, which is an order of chaos magicians. One could not believe it's an oxymoron, but there is such a thing as an order of chaos magicians. The first time I heard it, I was like, what, really? So the IoT stands for the Illuminates of Thanateros. It's not the Illuminati. Sorry to say, it's just a bunch of chaos magicians coming together, practicing magic in a very colorful way. I came across a weird Irish gypsy. I was browsing OkCupid, and there was this person offering a primal massage. I did not know what the fuck a primal massage was, but I was like, fuck yes, I think I need one of those. So I invited this person over, and this was a person that decided to live on the streets just because it's like an edgy thing to do, to survive a while on the street. He wanted to test his edges, and something very something Peter Carroll in his book Liber Psychonaut also recommends, if you want to really tap into your magic, go living on the fucking edge, because that's where the magic springs. So this person was living on the street, and his primal massage was basically a very, very painful massage into the meridians. He went really, really deep into the meridians and inflicting loads of pain. I would really scream. And every time he went into this point of giving me a lot of pain, he would ask a highly philosophical question. And then my mind was distracted and then thinking about this question and not about the pain. Or he would go think of your best orgasm. And then my mind was and I would not feel the pain. And I was okay, what the fuck was this about? I was like, oh, I'm experimenting with the 8-circuit brain model. I was like, what? Yeah, it's like Leary's model of consciousness, and I'm experimenting to see like if I can make you switch level of consciousness if you don't feel the pain. Like, well, no, it seemed to work. So he recommended this book to me, Prometheus Rising by Robert Anton Wilson. And I had come around Robert Anton Wilson before a couple of years, reading the Illuminatus trilogy and the Principia Discordia, which is the main Bible of Discordianism, how I find the goddess and what I did to her once I found her. A joke turned as a religion, or religion turned as a joke, however you want to see it, which I found very liberating, and the Illuminatus trilogy is a mindfuck on its own. So I got the book and started like reading it, but kind of like didn't pay attention much to it, put it aside again. Didn't feel like at the right moment, at the right time. And yeah, we got initiated, started doing magic. I'm like, fuck, this shit works, right? Started casting a lot of spells, nesting with other chaos magicians, doing a lot of magic, doing a lot of drugs. And so things were like really flowing, like we're like, fuck yeah, riding the big waves, like we're getting shit done, magic live, way. And then it all came crashing down. That crash looked like psychosis, paranoid schizophrenia, some episode of explosive discordians must stick apart, and we parted in discord kind of thing. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas meets Horror Rock Picture Show, blood, demons and stuff, and like, I went really crazy. And I spent around, like after like some of us parted, and I stuck around the one of them that was like psychotic, and then I came back with this paranoid schizophrenia diagnosis from the psychiatric ward. And then we found the book of Antero Ali, the 8-circuit brain model, which was kind of like a course. We started working through it. And this book kind of like helped me make sense of my experience, of the experience we just had. The experience into diving deep into chaos, into casting too much spells, into going super, super high and then crashing down, be completely fucked up and destabilized. And we started working with that book and with that course, and started building ourselves up from the ground again. It helped me look at what happened to us from a different perspective, not pathologizing it, but looking at it as some form of like nervous system instability caused by going way too high and losing our ground. And we kind of like gained a little bit of ground, and we lost our job again, and then like the apartment burned, and like all that shit happening. And at some point I was like, what the fuck? I feel like in season 5 of my life, and writers are just making ridiculous shit up. And at some point I just had to laugh at the fucking cosmic joke. And while reading that book, the beginning, the opening chapter of the book said, whatever this book inspires you to do, it's not so much about the model, it's not so much about the words in this book, it's what really ignites in your heart. And while I was working on that, and I was like, fuck, this is so brilliant, I'm gonna develop a coaching modality around this. And I did. This was 3 years ago, and here I am. So, the 8-circuit brain model and chaos magic. It has some similarities, it has some intersections, in the sense that these people, Robert Anton Wilson also practiced chaos magic or dabbled in chaos magic in some way. And we have like 8 circuits and 8 colors magics, and like it fits, right? It just fits. But to be honest, like for practicing chaos magic, you can use any model whatsoever. You can use a chakra system, you can use a Kabbalah system, you can use whatever floats your boat as a paradigm. I find this particular model especially useful if one is to approach chaos magic from the psychological model or the information model, instead of like the energy or the spirit model of magic, which means it is useful for looking at the practice of chaos magic as a way of nervous system hacking or hacking information into your system in order to change your way and your perception of reality. And by changing your perception of reality, you change how you show up in the world. And by changing how you show up in the world, you change your experience of the world and how the world responds to you as well. So it's kind of a bit of woo, but also kind of a bit of neuroscience and psychology, what I'm about to share with you. So here we have a quote from Antero Ali. This is what inspired me to look at this way, to fly higher, plant both feet firmly on the ground. That was a little bit of a paradigm shift also in looking at the model, because Leary and Bob Wilson rather looked at the higher circuits as the way to go. It's like, let's go higher and higher, like expanding consciousness, expanding at the edge of evolution. And Antero Ali was, no, fuck, come back to the body, let's come back to the ground. Only if you're like sufficiently grounded in your system can you safely go high without blowing your circuits. And this is where also my metaphor of like chaos surfing came from, because it was like, okay, if you're going to be like diving into chaos and playing with chaos, which I think it's a fantastic evolutionary catalyst and like makes you evolve pretty quickly and faster, but on the other hand, you need to be grounded and you need to find your balance in your center and in your core. And only by being balanced and you're bored is that you can't really surf those waves. And when you cast a spell or magic, to me it feels like you're unleashing a wave, right? You're creating waves, like boom, a spell, and something's gonna happen out of this wave. You better be ready to surf that wave as well. So we're gonna look a little bit at the background story of the thinkers, the concept of intelligence increase. Then we're gonna take a look at the maps, at the map itself, and how it relates to chaos magic. Discuss the notion of shocks and anchors, which is where the balance comes from, and then we'll dive into each of the other circuits. And I invite you at this point to take all a deep breath with me. So it might be that I talk very fast at some point. I invite you at any point when you feel like, oh, Mariana, it's like enough information for deep breath, just shout it, deep breath, and we all take a deep breath. That will help us also integrate the information you are about to hear. So don't shy. If you feel like, okay, I'm going too fast, call me on a deep breath. I will do the same every once in a while as well. All right, deep breath, and let's get started. So we're gonna take a look at the main thinkers and their approaches. It all starts with this guy, Timothy Leary, the infamous psychonaut. Also called in their centers Theory Leary. Right? And Theory Leary, or Leary the theorist, was the first one devising or thinking about this model, trying to create a theory around it. And it's supposed to be inspired by the chakra system. Yeah, he got like some scrolls back then like, around the chakra system, but he took it to another level. Leary was a brilliant evolutionary psychologist, and back then already very, very far ahead in his models of psychology and developmental psychology. Before Leary, everybody thought once our brain starts developing and reaches maturity around the age of 17, 80, 20, it stays that way and there's no possibility to change. But Leary found out there is actually ways to change your brain, and brain change happens, and neuroplasticity happens, and this is something that Leary actually discovered. He also left us with the famous tool set and setting, which is also important with regards to this model. So we're going to look at what is a set and what is a setting as well a little bit. And the counterculture slogan, turn on, like switch your system on, right? Tune in into the outside, into the fine things, and then drop out of societal constrictions. And it's a little bit of a mission as well to really indicate this theory of Leary, because I think the baby was thrown out with the bathwater. Yes, he pissed off some people. It was like, when they started researching psychedelics, and Leary was one of the first ones that went to Mexico, to Maria Sabina, to have some mushrooms, and then was like, fuck, like in one trip I discovered more about psychology than in 40 years of research. Fuck, this is amazing. Everybody needs to have this. And like guys like Huxley and other ones that were already studying, Hoffman, were like, no, this needs to stay among the few selected ones that are capable to handle this kind of thing. And we're kind of like at the discourse again, right? Like a medicalization track going on. So there's a lot of people say like, no, this needs to be all in a proper clinical setting, or there's the more traditional people are like, this needs to be in the rituals with the shamans that have done this in the ancient ages. But it was like, no, everybody needs a taste of this. So you know what happened, he was like public enemy number one, and everybody was fucked, and the research was forbidden, so everybody blamed Leary, and nobody cared about his model. So it kind of went into the fringes, because academia would not pay attention to what this guy brilliantly wrote. But this guy, Robert Anton Wilson, who was also like a philosopher, futurist, he took it up. He actually started corresponding with Leary while he was in prison. So they kind of like co-developed the model. It was not just Leary, but Robert Anton Wilson was giving impulses and input as well. And Robert Anton Wilson took it into practical application. If you try reading Leary, it's like, whoa, it's very brainy. But Robert Anton Wilson kind of like broke it down in a more digestible language, also added some exercises to it so that you can make it palpable and you can like get some direct experience or experiment with the model itself, and it's not just main theory. So what kind of like sets the tune is this quote. So we look for the secret, the philosopher's stone, the elixir of the wise, the supreme enlightenment, God or whatever, and all the time it's carrying us about. It's the human nervous system. So this model can be seen as a map of the human nervous system, and like all experiences are brought to you by your nervous system. Yay! So befriend your nervous system, get better results. Alright? And he came up also with this concept of reality tunnels, which means each of our nervous systems are wired differently. We're going to look at like how those wirings happens. And since we're wired differently and conditioned differently, we all perceive the chaos of reality in a very unique manner, right? We don't take in all the information there is everywhere and all at once, because that would be overwhelming to our nervous system. So the conditioning and programming of our nervous system kind of functions as filters for the information we're perceiving from reality. And this is what makes the reality tunnels. I'm gonna look a little bit more into that later. Deep breath. Now this guy, Antero Ali, he's still around, but unfortunately not for long anymore. He has terminal cancer, so he's his last steps in this life. And he started working with the 8-circuit brain model and wrote a book called Angel Tech around the same time that Robert Anton Wilson brought out the Prometheus Rising. And they started having contact, and he started visiting Robert Anton Wilson and go into discourse with him. But this guy, like as I mentioned before, like Leary had this like, we need to get higher, and Robert Anton Wilson was like also like, yeah, the higher consciousness is the shit, you know. The other thing is like the robotic consciousness. It's like, oh yeah. But this guy was like, no, it's all in the body. It's all in the body, and if you really, really want to explore your subconscious and your subconscious wiring, you go through the body, you take the body with you on the trip. And this is where he came up with a technique that was developed by Chorovsky, paratheater, which is kind of like embodied ritual practice to explore your subconscious mind and your subconscious nervous system wiring. And this is what I'm playing with. And you know, like in spirituality, there's a lot of like ego bashing discourse, like, yeah, you gotta kill your ego, you gotta transcend your ego. And this guy's like, no, befriend your ego, man. Yeah? Because a strong but flexible ego is needed to manifest our innermost dreams into the external world at large. The ego is basically our interaction matrix with this world. Without an ego, you can't do shit here. So like, there's no reason to kill it. It's like, yeah, make it more flexible, you know, that it's kind of adapt to the flow of life where you're going, but don't try to kill it. Stop trying to kill your ego. Deep breath. So the approaches, they were playing, like Leary was obsessed with SMILE, which stands for space migration, intelligence increase, and life extension. And you can maybe put it into place, considering that he was imprisoned for many years in solitary confinement, and then one can relate that he wanted to escape somehow into outer space and think about future evolution and life extension and whatnot. Robert Anton Wilson approached it more from the perspective of meta-programming, which is a term coined by the psychologist John Lilly, right? It's okay, if you reach this kind of higher self, super consciousness, you kind of go into the operator level of your nervous system, and you can make changes, you can reprogram your mind. And this is what he was all about, how to create brain change, how to use altered states of consciousness and substances to actually reprogram your nervous system. And there were some experiments around the time that the CIA was doing as well with acid and trying to brainwash people. And in some sense they were kind of successful. And Robert Anton Wilson broke it also down, how you break circuit by circuit and then can start reprogramming people into different reality tunnels, into different mind maps, and into different behaviors as well. So it's possible, and as chaos magicians or meta-programmers, what we're after is using this kind of altered states to actually reprogram our nervous system and create brain change. Ansaro Ali was all about ritual embodiment, about exploring and experimenting with the body. At some point he stopped using psychedelic substances and said we can't reach all the states of consciousness just by using the body and the technology of ritual. The drugs are not necessary. And for me it's about balanced psychonautics, because I just saw and experienced how devastating it can be if we overdo it and we fry our nervous system by doing too much drugs or by doing too much chaos magic without grounding. So what I want to kind of promote is, by using this model, taking a balanced approach to consciousness exploration so that we can expand, we can grow without frying our nervous systems. Deep breath. So the 8 circuits represent as well, can say like 8 dimensions of consciousness, 8 dimensions of mind. We can also see like 8 different types of intelligence available through our nervous system. And Robert Anton Wilson defines intelligence as the capacity to receive, decode, and transmit information. That's like, put it in this way, I absorbed a lot of information from Robert Anton Wilson, Leary, and Antero Ali. I decoded it for myself, right? And now I'm transmitting it to you. Simple process, right? Absorb, integrate, transmit. If you don't integrate, you're just going to parrot what you heard, right? So the process of integration for intelligence increase is very crucial. We need to make the process of integration also for all of our psychonautic explorations. And that's what we often kind of like pass down on, how important integration is. So stupidity is a blockage of this process at any point. Bigotry, ideologies, etc. block the ability to receive. They filter out the information. Robotic reality tunnels block the ability to decode or integrate new signals. Like what doesn't fit my map, I cannot get, right? Doesn't enter. And censorship blocks transmission. So absorb, integrate, transmit. It's based on how the neural networks work as well, right? The circuits are describing neural networks. So the neuron fires, receives a signal, integrates it somehow, makes sense of it, and transmits it to another part of the brain. Deep breath. And what's this meta-programming thing about? So Leary found out that there's something like imprint vulnerability. So there's moments, as well in our development, as also on acid, for example, on the peak of acid state, where we can imprint or create new imprints in our nervous system. So imprint vulnerability is to refer to a profound, malleable, and dangerously open state of the psyche, capable of being imprinted with new patterns and habits of behavior, thinking, and belief. Leary discovered that imprint vulnerability occurred during the peak of any strong dose of LSD, a brief time when new patterns and programs could be introduced with highly therapeutic, life-changing results, right? So this is something to be very, very aware of, right? This window of neuroplasticity we have when we are in the peak state of acid means whatever is happening in our setting and in the set around us can influence or imprint and can deeply imprint in our brain. So you really want to be conscious of how to create your set and setting for your trips. And in our development, there's a phase always circuit by circuit where there's an imprint vulnerability, and then there is conditioning, and then there's learning, right? So the imprints, once they're in, it's very difficult to change, except on a high dose of acids or a high altered state. The conditioning is what happens, like Pavlovian conditioning and how our nervous system, like the way our brain structures the information highways, and learning the way we integrate new information. So the map. The map is not the territory. Famous quote around that. So let's be aware that this is only a model, right? It's not reality. It's not the high state of neuroscience. It's not something very accurate. It's just an analytical model to make sense, a tool to make sense, right? we can say it can map consciousness, or it maps the central nervous system. Maybe it maps human intelligence, maybe it maps the brain, maybe it maps human experience, maybe all of this in some way. But it's just an analytical concept, and depending on which map, if you take the metaphor a little bit, if you're exploring some foreign territory you don't know, depending what map you get, your experience of the territory will be different, right? If you get a map that shows all the rivers, you're going to explore a lot of rivers. If it's a map that shows you the forests, you're going to see more forests. If it's a map that explores spiritual places to go about to encounter, you're only going to encounter that. So depending on which map you use, you're going to find also different information in the territory of consciousness and your own nervous system as well. So even though if I find this map awesome, please also use other maps. Deep breath. So we have 8 circuits, right? 8 colors of magic as well. We start with the circuit 1 in red, circuit 2, circuit 3, circuit 4. These are the lower circuits. The higher circuits in blue, circuit 5, circuit 6, circuit 7, and circuit 8. I'm going to name them in just a minute, just to place them on the map. Map upon map, right? You can double this map as well with the chakra system. You can double this map as well with the Kabbalah system. Leary went deep into also correlating all kinds of other esoteric systems, symbol systems into this map, so you can enrich it with whatever you want. I'm correlating it with the chaos sphere. So just for you to get an idea, usually the colors in the chaos sphere are put differently because they have their correspondence on the horizontal, vertical, and diagonal axis. So the colors I ascribe the circuits to don't match exactly the color usually represented in the chaos sphere. So we have with circuit 1, I assigned the red color of magic. Red magic is about fight, war magic, defense magic, but also ramping up your vital force, your vital power. The yellow magic is around ego magic, so it's about increasing your radiance, about increasing your standing in the world, about refining your ego structures, about shadow work, about illumination. The orange magic is a mind magic, right? Thinking fast, hacking the algorithm, hacking the odds, receiving information, telling compelling stories. The green magic is about love, relationships, and healing, about earth magic, about tapping into the earth. The blue magic is usually described as wealth magic or flow magic, to get like things into the material world and get the money flowing, get abundance and stuff. The purple magic is usually ascribed to sex magic, mood magic, so like tapping into the power of Eros, tapping into the life force to manifest, to create in the world. For me, it's pink, octarine. Probably you've heard like Terry Pratchett, the 8 colors of magic. That's like what went into the chaos magic color system as well. So octarine is a pure color of magic, like fairy magic, where it's like, you think of something and it happens, yay, no effort asked. It's like, oh, flow the synchronicities. And usually for every chaos magician, octarine has a different color. So for me, it's pink. Pink. And black magic. Yes, black magic is also part of the chaos sphere. But black magic stands for, probably some use it like death magic, inflict like death, kill someone, probably, but it's mostly calling in the spirits, necromancy, tapping into information of past souls. It can also be just like radical transformation, like creating ego deaths, creating radical change in yourself. So this is how I correlate the colors of Magick to the circuits, and we're going to look a little bit deeper into that. Deep breath. I like the representation of the 8-circuit brain model on the cows here as well, so you can see and use it as a compass as well. This is like a disordered, disbalanced system representation, right? Happens probably in a lot of Western systems, in the sense of like, okay, we're like kind of okay in the physical, you know, basic survival needs are made, most people are okay with their survival issues, have a roof over their head, have enough food to eat. We're like kind of like emotionally crippled a little bit, don't have so much access to our emotional shenanigans. Then we're like really strong in the mind, you know, like really refine the mind, analytical and rational. We're like kind of okay in the like social structures, build some good social structures, sometimes it's crumbling. Not many of us have like access to like being like very present in the here and now, and the flow and the wealth. And more and more are tapped into this kind of like psychic power, and then maybe some are tapped in to higher consciousness, especially psychonauts, right, taking the strips. And a few of us are really tapped into the mysteries of death, or actually facing death, or making death a part of our reality. So with this like representation of the cow star, you kind of like can also see like how balanced or imbalanced overall your system is. So you can use it as a compass as well to see like where do you need to do your work. So the lower circuits, the lower 4 circuits, we said are the psychological and central nervous system development circuits. So it describes how our nervous system has evolved from the day we were born to around our teenage years, and this process of evolution there. And it maps our survival patterns, because our brain creates strategies to survive physically in this world, survive emotionally in this world, survive mentally, and survive socially. And all these kind of like strategies become or imprinted patterns or conditioned patterns in our brain. And it's the usual way our brain will go to save energy, right? And once it has created a survival pattern, it doesn't like to let go, because like, why would I change a running system? That's like too much energy. And what's very important, if we take in this model and start working with it, is to understand the needs of our nervous system at these different levels. Our survival needs for the physical, for the emotional, for the mental, and the social navigation. And if we start meeting that needs, then we start getting out of our survival modus and can start expanding as well. We can start creating change, can start playing with the higher circuits. If we don't meet these needs, and we go for the expansion, the consequence will often be dysregulation from the nervous system. Because you're bringing a little bit of disorder, right? This is the order of your brain, and then you go into like expansive and altered states, you bring in disorder. But if those needs are not met, the nervous system goes like, my survival mechanisms are not functioning anymore. So like it kind of like it goes into a state of chaos, and if you're not careful, you'll fry your nervous system. Deep breath. The higher circuits represent more the transpersonal psychology kind of experiences, right? So when our nervous system taps into the outside of our ego structures, this is where we have the altered states, different kinds of trips, or as chaos magic discourses like to say, gnosis. Like entering gnosis is the way where you can cast a spell. These are evolutionary experiences or evolutionary catalysts. So you bring in disorder, and you kind of like force your nervous system to adapt new strategies, because usually the survival strategies won't match these new experiences. So the nervous system, the lower circuits, need to respond. And if you have enough response ability to whatever is happening in the higher circuits, you get to a state of growth and evolution. If you don't have enough responsibility, you get to dysregulation, where we were before. Deep breath. Now, the concept of shocks and anchors was introduced by Antero Ali to this model. Leary and Robert Anton Wilson didn't talk about this. This is something he discovered, and he has been working with this para-theater model for 40 years. So it's a thing that he developed out of like experience, of direct embodied experience. So what he proposes is that there is a correlation between the lower circuits and the upper circuits on the diagonal, and that's again why the chaos star is so perfect to represent this model. So you have circuit 1 and circuit 5 having a correspondence, the anchor being the safety you can create in your nervous system, in your body, and the shock being ecstasy, the states of ecstasy, extends. The circuit 2 and the circuit 6 correspond to each other, and the anchor being your own emotional sovereignty, and the shock being states of uncertainty. This is something like when the pandemic started, this is something you can like observe, or like at least I observed very clearly. It's a state, pandemic hits, disorder, right? The usual order of things is disrupted. So we are entering a high uncertainty zone. Nobody knows what's going to happen. This is a shock for our emotional system, which is about certainty. And it's like, I really want to have control over how things are unfolding. But the moment that you feel like things are out of control, you get like all gibberish. And then you respond out of your basic nervous system programming. So what happened? Some people responded with oh my God, everything's out of control. Please, Daddy, state, make it safe again. Restore order and restore control because I feel unsafe, right? And what happened for those people? That everybody that did not comply with the authority imposition of order, or like, you're the enemy, you're risking our order, you're making it unsafe, right? And the other people on the other side of the spectrum were like, fuck no, well, I won't do what you tell me. Fuck no, I won't do what you tell me. Fuck authority, I won't do what you tell me. So these people, like, what do they have? Like, okay, they're like, fuck authority, but they still need to regain agency and control, because only if you fuck authority, you don't get the sense of order back, right? So what you need is a good narrative that tells you who's the evil one, creating all the disorder or creating all the control, and then you get to be a hero and thus regaining agency because you're fighting the evil forces. So this is how a little bit on this model you can look at that. There's another relationship of shock and anchors between circuit 3 and circuit 7. So circuit 7 is those mystical experiences of oneness, right? Like, I met God, I'm all one, we're all one. And the mind goes like, what? No. It's all separate, right? So kind of like the mind gets a shock from this kind of experiences and needs to find a way to make sense. So all kinds of mystical experiences we have, we come back and our mind kind of like needs to grasp with something, some model, some narrative, some theory, some other religious talk to actually make sense of what is happening. And circuit 4 and circuit 8 also correspond to each other in the sense of like the shock of death or the shock of impermanence, nothing stays as it is a shock to the social order. Because the social order, or the way we operate in the social realm, usually is like, okay, I have found my flow, I found my structure, so I keep going like that, and then like things don't stay the same, right? And we need to adapt. And we better like can't digest the shock of impermanence or death if we're embedded in community as well. If we're left alone with our grief, with the shock of death, we usually are dysregulated for a longer time than if we can't face the shock of grief and of death through community. So this is the concept of shocks and anchors, which is also that goes into the play of balanced psychonautics. Deep breath. You're still with me? Or is it like, yeah?
Yes.
So let's look at the circuits one by one. We have like the green, the yellow, and the red names here for all of the circuits. The green one is Leary and Robert Anton Wilson, how they named it. Over there is how Antero Ali named it. And I've created my own names, because this is also part of what Antero Ali calls the integration process. You make the map your own. So according to your own experience, when you start experimenting with this map, you find your own words and you make it operational for you. So Leary called it the vegetative invertebrate system, or Robert Anton Wilson, the oral biosurvival. For Antero Ali, is what more about physiobiological intelligence and the will in the system, the will to survive. So this is the system that keeps the basic functionings of our biological unit, so that's why I call it the bio-unit maintenance system. So it's like all the subconscious processes that you don't register consciously, like usually breathing, your blood circulation, your heartbeat, your digestive system, all of that. But it's also the system that keeps you safe and starts alerting you if there's some danger. So take a moment, like just a deep breath to check in with your body at this point. Like, how do you feel right now? How safe do you feel being in this room full of people? So evolutionary, this part of the system is the oldest one. It's already part of the reptilian brain, part of invertebrate animals. It's the amygdala, the alarm center of the brain. If you look at it with polyvagal theory, it's also like the vagus nerve, the frontal vagus nerve and the dorsal vagus nerve, that activates once it senses danger. So the basic program is fight, flight, or freeze, right? Like if there's danger and your nervous system registers danger, you have the possibility to respond with, okay, I'm going full on and fight this, or I'm going to like run for it, and if I can't fight it and I can run for it, what does it do? It shuts down. That's the freeze system, like play dead, right? Hope it doesn't eat you, play dead, and it releases also a lot of chemicals so you won't feel the pain if the tiger actually eats you. In our personal development, this part of the system gets imprinted during pregnancy already and early infancy. So we're talking that the phase when you're in your mom's belly and the stress level your mom has while she's pregnant and shortly after giving birth has a high influence on how your nervous system on this very basic survival level is imprinted. So if your mom was having a lot of stress, or you did not have the contact with the mom body in your early infancy moments to correlate with her, you will usually get imprinted with a more anxious system that alerts for danger for almost everything, you know, like there's a constant state of anxiety, a constant state of like alertness, a constant state of like, the world is not safe, I'm not safe, the world's not safe, I'm not okay, the world's not okay. If your mom was very calm while in pregnancy, took good care of herself, and after your birth, she embraced you and she was breathing with you and carried you, and that's the thing in Western society. Like, if you look at different cultures, most moms will carry the infants for at least a year and a half, you know, in their backs or in their bellies. They never put them down, because we need, in the early infancy, we need the physical contact to actually develop a sense of safety in the world. We are carry-on mammals in that sense. And here in the West, we put the children down, we put them to sleep in a bed apart, and let them cry. Yeah, you need to like sleep-proof them, let them cry, don't go for them. What happens to a system that you let cry all the time? At some point, it collapses and it freezes, because the baby is crying for attention to get its needs met. And nobody comes, and then what does the nervous system print? Like, know what is coming, my needs are not getting met, I'm going to into freeze. And that's very difficult to get out. So the basic needs, food, shelter, safety, but also very important, feeling our body deeply, like really feeling what's up in our body, and really feeling the signals that our body is sending us all the time. And this is also where the paratheater comes in, like really getting into physical warm-up, really feeling the body to tune into this part of the system. When we're disbalanced in this part of the system, we develop like security addictions. You know, we need to make everything safe, like control everything in the environment so that we can't feel safe. And we will constantly be feeling unsafe. A lot of anxiety, addictions come from that, or where we can't make ourselves feel safe, so we rely on figures of authority to make us safe, or we rely on partners to make us safe. Right? Mommy types or daddy types, so that we can't feel safe because we can't generate the safety within ourselves. And drugs that speak to that part of the system or activate that part of the system is opium, you know? Like you get back to like the safety feeling of being in your mommy's belly, like everything is like, oh, it's like, it's safe, right? It's like, cozy. Or nicotine, which helps you ground also. And the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors that also work on this part of the system to kind of like shut down the amygdala, shut down the constant sense of being in anxiety and being in a sense of threat. Deep breath. So we look at this, again, system of absorb, integrate, transmit, which, as I said, is like the intelligence increase pattern. We can also take this as a developmental model to see like, okay, where is the stages of work we need to do in each part of the system. So absorption for this part of the system means like, for once, identifying the body signals, like really being tuned in to what our body is saying. When is it tired? When is it hungry? When is it thirsty? What are the pain signals your body is sending you? When does your body start getting sick, and what is the signal sending to you? And then respond to those signals, yeah? And the concept of interoception, which comes also from polyvagal theory, means like the system is alert all the time. It's kind of scanning the room. Is there any threat here? Is there any tiger? Is there any murderer between us? Can I be safe? Can I like relax into it? So integration, in a sense, means learning to regulate your nervous system back into safety for yourself, right? So you get excited, you get agitated, and then finding methods to regulate back into safety. And that's where the deep breathing comes in as well, because it stimulates the vagus nerve, the frontal vagus nerve. We kind of like slow down through deep breath and regulate the system back into safety. Or probably if you have like observed animals, you know, tiger comes and like run away, like activation, then you went away, tiger didn't eat you, what do the animals do? Like, they shake it out. They shake it out and then they continue like, grass, nice, play. We don't. We usually carry the tension around all day, right? Like we get activated or danger, threat, and like tense, because like society said it's weird to shake it out, right? But no, it's like breathe and shake it out. It's a possibility. And then the transmission phase here is when you actually can co-regulate with other systems. And this is something that mammals also do. Have you seen a herd of cows? Right? How do they co-regulate it to safety? Like a cow on the side of the crowd's like moo, and then the other cows on the other side here, all right, safe over there. Like how is it here? Like moo. And the other cows go like, okay, on the other side, so it's like, moo. And then everybody knows, okay, like on the periphery we're safe, and in the middle they respond as well. So this is something our nervous systems do as well. We tune into another. So if you have a safe system, you can help co-regulate another one. So somebody's agitated or in a state of anxiety, you go to them, you go with your body, you go close, you start breathing together, slowly together, and this will calm the other nervous system down as well. So you can actually transmit safety. Big breath.
Can we open the window actually? Can we open the window somewhere?
Can we open the window? Can we open it in the back maybe? Oh, that'd be great because I'm feeling cold here. So circuit 2. This is what usually would be described as ego, but in the system, circuits 1 to 4 are all part of ego. The emotional locomotion, emotional territorial from Robert M. Lewison, emotional territorial intelligence, or the will to power, and I call it emotional sovereignty, like being in your own emotional authority. This evolutionary biology-wise, it's limbic. It's described or associated with the limbic system that was first formed in mammals. And the basic programs that imprint very early on when we're toddlers, so when we start like walking up and like crawling around, discovering the territory, walking away from the mom, it's either like dominance of submission, and it has to do with how we respond to our parents' figure, to our figures of authority. If they're very domineering and we submit to please them, or if we like kind of like respond in a dominance way, and it also imprints a sense of either aggression or cooperation in response to social hierarchy and status. So it's like basically our monkey brain, also in a very, very basic system. The needs, and this is the thing, the need is ego strength. We need to actually, this part of the system needs to feel like we're strong and we have like self-worth and we can assert ourselves, we can take care of our emotional needs, we can take care of our territory as well. So it's also about territorial ownership. Perhaps this is like the ownership of the room in your shared apartment. Perhaps it's the ownership of your own apartment. Perhaps it's like, I want to own the Ukraine as well. So some monkeys have like bigger territorial needs than others, just like that. It's weird. But it has to do also with your personal boundaries, like your personal space. Like, hey, dude, you're infringing in my space. What happens if somebody comes close into your space? Your nervous system gets activated. Either with like, no, okay, I'm gonna assert my dominance, like fuck off from my space, or you kind of like retreat, right, into submitting to the dominance of someone else in your space. We also need a sense of self-importance. We really need to feel that we matter, that there's something we do that we matter. And we need this part of the system, the monkey brains needs to figure out the status games. It needs to see like, okay, where's the power at and where do I stand in the power hierarchy of the pack? And it needs security and it needs a sense of control. And we can't like go all spiritual bypassy on this and say like, no, that's like ego shit, we don't need that. But the fact is your nervous system, your monkey brain really needs that. So better is to befriend that and find a way to serve, to cater those needs in a way that does not make you an obnoxious bully or a hyper-dominant, self-absorbed, indulgent person, but like try to figure out what is actually in your control, what not, what's your territory, what's not your territory, where your boundaries are at, and how you can actually assert yourself and take care of those needs and feel a sense of importance. Because if you don't, and you fall into this balance, well, it gets into the place of burnout, right? If you're always pleasing everybody, you can never say no, and everything you do, oh, yeah. Burnout at some point. Depression, control trips, or apathy, power play, all kind of like the drama loops we play out in relationships. Then also this fawning response is also like from trauma, like fight, flight, freeze. I put it in circuit 1. Fawn would be a response from circuit 2. It's trying to please the dominant person in the room. Try to make yourself safe and secure by pleasing the people in power, by pleasing the people that you perceive to have authority over you. It can be also an emotional overdrive, like when your emotions are just like constantly on kind of like a roller coaster, right? Or if you're constantly approval seeking because you cannot maintain your sense of self-worth and always need somebody outside of yourself to correspond that. So what's the drug or the substance that activates the circuit? Interesting enough, alcohol. So for example, like get really, really drunk, you can kind of like see the monkey programming of people. Like some monkeys will like, I'm the dominant monkey in the room. Others will be like more like, yeah, just like, look at me, hey, look at me. Or be like all happy monkeys and be like all making fun and jokes and everybody should laugh them and just like me, just really like me. And other monkeys will just like, be in the corner and just like observe everything that's happening. So yeah, so if you kind of like get really, really drunk, you can go to the core of your monkey programming. Deep breath. So the process of intelligence increase here would be like to actually pay attention to what you're feeling. And before your mind actually kicks in, feel the feels without putting a story to it. And there's like a distinction maybe also between emotions and feelings, right? Emotions is the initial response your nervous system has to something that pertains to your boundaries, to something that pertains to your territory, to something that pertains to your sense of self-worth. If that gets somehow activated, you get an emotional response because it's supposed to make you respond in a way to make your territory safe again or secure again. So feel the feels. Integration would be the part to learn to manage your emotional supply. If you're like, you can't see like a tank, if you're like full of it, right? You might be a little bit hard to take for people. Like when you hear like, you're too much, right? You're too much. It's like, it's a lot of emotional supply happening there. If you're low on emotional supplies, we're like, low and energy. So our emotional supply is also what keeps us going, what keeps us like getting into convictions to like fight for something, create our will, and actually move towards something. And it is about creating some way of self-sovereignty, to be your own authority, to have the authority lie within you, to not depend on external authorities and not impose your authority on somebody else, but just be your own authority. That would be like an integrated emotional system. And the transmission phase is then like getting into sense of you can go into an honest expression of your emotions without being, again, obnoxious on others, an authentic self-expression, and also maybe holding space for emotional alchemy, meaning that you can process all that emotional stuff happening, not storing it in your body, and through the processing, you can then create change and growth and reassure the local self-sovereignty and help others to do so as well. That would be transmission phase. Deep breath. Another one. All right, so circuitry. And this is where it gets mental. So there's the laryngeal symbolic, laryngeals, like we're making sounds, yeah? And symbolic, language in the sense that we're like creating symbols to represent reality. For Robert Anton Wilson, it was the semantic time binding, so meaning, so what is the meaning of the system, symbols, and how do we arrange the symbol systems, but also the time binding circuit, because it's the mind that creates our sense of time, right? We remember the past, we create stories about the past, we create stories about the future, so our sense of timing is in circuit 3. Symbolic conceptual intelligence, or the will to reason, the will to make sense of the world. So I call it the sense and map making circuit, because it's like where we build our categories, it's where we build our maps, where we build our models of the world, where we build our explanations of how the world works. So we create maps, or we work with maps, and these maps help us make sense of the world. And it happens then further in evolution when we start becoming more like Homo sapiens and develop the neocortex, which is an evolutionary advantage over other mammals. That can be like a basic bright or basic dump imprint. And this imprint starts around the age where we go to primary school. The needs of the system is to remain sane, to remain some sense of sanity. So the mind will always create narratives and stories and ways of looking at the world in order for us to feel sane. Yeah? And maybe it's a good strategy or maybe not, right? Maybe for some people to really believe in conspiracy theories is a way of keeping them sane, because it's the way to make sense of the world in an impossible and uncertain situation. Maybe believing in religion is a way to keep sane in an uncertain and difficult, complex world, because it reduces the complexity. Maybe using the 8-circuit brain model is a way to keep sane. And the part of the system has the tools of anticipation, analysis, communication, pattern recognition, and semantics, so creating meaning. We know that we're in this balance when we're like caught up in the loops of monkey mind, and always in the same loops. Or we fall into situations of insanity. Maybe it's not clinical insanity, but it's also not really sane because you're not really functioning that well in the world. Or we have an array of unchecked cognitive biases. There's like 25 at least of them, and then other 25 logical fallacies our brain uses to reduce the information and make sense of stuff. Or dogmatism, when we're like really strong on some belief, or when we go to the point of the logic is the master of everything and makes the rest of the system its bitch, and then all other experiences are not valid because it's not logical, and then it's not real and it's not happening because it's not logical. It's also a way to just like sort through information. Or when our mind is over-exerting tyranny over our emotional system, or when we develop some sense of grandiosity, illusions of grandeur, and drugs that activate this part of the system are like the stimulants, speed, cocaine, caffeine, amphetamine, Ritalin, all things that like to speed up the thinking of your mind. And the absorb, integrate, transmit is very easy, I think, in this to understand. It's like, so absorb could be like reading, listening, comparing data, so like what you're doing right now, you're absorbing information and transmitting. The integration is the part where you start thinking for yourself, making your own sense, using your own maps, your own categories, associating the information you have integrated into your models, into your maps, so that it makes sense to you. And then transmitting is then like teaching, speaking, authoring, writing about it, somehow putting it out there in your own sense making. Deep breath. Circuit 4, social sexual domestication, or the social sexual circuit. So this is where our evolutionary impulses to reproduce start to kicking in. Antero Ali calls it the social moral intelligence or the will to socialize. I call it the social navigation circuit. So it's like how we navigate in the social world, in the social realm, and the strategies we develop to be part of the tribe. It's associated with the prefrontal cortex, and in vagus nerve theory also with the vagus nerve in the sense of that if you're safe or safely regulated in your system, then you can't be in social interactive mode. So if your system is in some sort of alert or freeze, it will be difficult to socially interact, but if your system is well regulated, you can go into social interaction mode. So the basic program here would be usually the moral or immoral imprint. Chaos magicians usually strive to be amoral, so neither immoral nor moral, so outside of the moral scope of realms. And usually the basic imprints here start in high school, because what happens in the evolution of the nervous system and when we hit puberty, there's a hit of sexual hormones that kind of like make a remapping of the brain until the circuit 4 imprints kick in. Our brain kind of absorbs everything, right? Absorbs all the information we're getting in circuitry from our caregivers, from our teachers, absorbs all the strategies to survive emotionally, everything's absorption. And then in puberty it starts like, okay, what do I really need to procreate, to find a mate? And what's not useful for that? So like, we kind of like drop off a lot of informations and rewire our brains a little bit to fit the survival strategy when the DNA program kicks in of like, you need to reproduce and you need to find a way to find a mate, so get into the courtship game and forget about math. So the needs here in the part of the system is belonging, courtship, friendship, bonding, love, finding a tribe, finding community, developing sexuality, developing an identity. Who am I in the world actually? Where do I fit in? Right? And we go sometimes from tribe to tribe. Am I goth? Am I punk? Am I hippie? I don't know, doesn't fit also. Like, let's try another thing until we kind of like find belonging. And some of us never really find that kind of belonging. And then you become a chaos magician and go into an order of chaos magicians with all the people that don't belong in groups. And they don't even belong together anymore, basically. So, this balance is when you start resourcing to strategies of manipulation to getting your social needs met. Or creating possessiveness of the people around you, trying to let them go. Or you're being guilt-ridden, so you're like the moral programs imprinted in you have you all the time like, oh no, I'm so bad, I look bad thing, you know. Or embarrassment, or if you feel like an outcast, you don't belong, you're cast out, or you have like the lone wolf hermit phenomena going on, like me. Or you're like social ineptitude, so like you cannot play the social game, you don't understand the social codes, you don't understand the social rules, you don't understand how to behave. Or you fill up with resentment because you can't get that need of belonging met, and then you just feel resentment for everybody else. Funny or interesting, Leary did not assign any drug to that part of the system, other than the sexual hormones. I believe, and oxytocin, and I believe cacao actually is a catalyst for circuit 4 because it can also like calms that amygdala down, it calms it calms down the sense of threat, it opens our heart and it allows us to connect, so it allows us to feel a sense of belonging as well. And that's why I love to work with cacao medicine, also in coaching, because it allows that deeply connected space and feeling belonging and feeling safe enough to actually go do the emotional work. Deep breath. So absorbing is like, absorbing all the rules of the social game, you know, you bird up, you can't do this, you can't do that, these are the rules of social engagement, this is the social contract. Everything that you learn in school about how to behave and how to become a good citizen, a good productive member of society. The integration phase is when you like start like, okay, yeah, this is okay, these are the social codes, but it's about finding your own ethical compass, like doing away with morality and actually building a conscience, knowing where your values are at, where you make your decisions that are aligned with your own ethical compass. And it's also about unlocking the possibility of honest relating instead of like transactional relating from a place of like, I'm here in my own authentic self-expression, and I meet you here as another human with your own authentic self-expression. And then relate in this very open and honest way based on your own ethical compass. So like you don't need to know what are my values, what is my core, what I am here for, how do I navigate in the world, and which are the humans that actually fit those values and those cores. And with them, then I can relate honestly. And then the transmission phase is like, all right, so I know what my thing is, and then let's find the others and build a tribe, and then build a community that's actually aligned with our values, that's actually intentional for what we're doing, and not just part of a socialized cultural programming, but something that is from individuals that are aware of what their ethical compass is, that find the others and build an intentional ethical community, or as Jamie Will puts it, an ethical cult. Deep breath. So circuit 5. This is where we start getting into the altered states, right? So Leary called this the neurosomatic. For Leary, all the higher circuits start with neuro something because it's fancy, it lets you think it's also about neurology. Robert Anton Wilson is also like it's the neurosomatic technicians, he calls the shamans the neurosomatic technicians because they know how to manipulate your brain chemistry so you can't feel good. So it's a technique of feeling good, right? And Terali calls it somatic intelligence of body wisdom. It's actually tuning into what your body says, to the wisdom of your body. And it's characterized not by a will to something, but by the absence of suffering. It's like this feel-good mood, right? I call it a somatic hedonist, and I think Berlin is full of somatic hedonists that are after pleasure activism and feeling good and seeking ecstasy, things like playing and feeling fine, right? So we remember the lower parts of the systems are have an anchor. We have here the shock. So the shock of ecstasy. It means like, if we relate it back to circuit 1, right, to actually feel and get into a state of ecstasy, you need to feel safe in your body. If you go to a play temple, I don't know if everyone is familiar, but Berlin is full of these experiences of going to temple nights, where you get a bunch of people half naked to play around with each other, have some kind of like bodily encounters. But if you don't create safety for the people first, so that they can feel like, okay, there's nobody threatening me in this room, then you can't let yourself go to actually play, right? Because you're like, all concerned with like social things and maybe this and shame and whatnot. So you need actually to feel safe, to feel ecstasies. And if you go into a state of ecstasy without creating that safety in your body, you dysregulate. And that's why like maybe the next day you're like, oh, nervous monkey, a little bit back into nervous monkey state, because ecstasy is quite a high intensity source of energy, difficult to handle. So it's all about, again, creating safety in the body. So the features when you activate circuit 5 is that this like, Eckhart Tolle, the power of now. It's like be really, really present, be here and now. And this is like this being very here and now is an embodied experience because your body is always present in the here and now, right? Your mind goes in the future, goes in the past, but the body is present. Emotions might linger also in the past or might get excited because of anticipation of the future, but the body is always present. And once you unlock that presence, you can also unlock charisma, right? Somebody that is presently embodied is usually a very charismatic person that kind of like emanates this like, hey, I'm here in this room, and my presence fills this room. And you can access this kind of technology, like the usual paths of Tantra will teach you how to get embodied present. The yogas usually also do. But it's also about finding and falling into pleasure, really discovering what is pleasurable for the body. So dropping out of your mind and falling into your senses, right? Come to your senses out of your mind. And it's about kinetic language, so really dancing, right? How did you generate ecstasy? So how did tribes generate ecstasy? Usually drumming and dancing. I don't know, ecstatic dances in Berlin, something like that. It's like, it's a bodily function. The body gets you into those neurochemicals that create the states of ecstasy. Catalysts can also be moments of rapture, right? Where you're like, I don't know, you're like going around, you're hiking in the mountains, probably you come to a clear and it's like, wow, the landscape. And you have just like this moment of awe where you feel like, oh God, the world, so fantastic. And you get like raptured away by this experience. Or moments of bliss, or communion with nature where you feel like super connected to nature. Or you feel like in perfect flow and everything is flowing in flow states. But also the childlike wonder of awe. Yeah? When you're just like in awe of everything and like seeing the world with these innocent eyes and just like wondering about everything. And actually letting your inner child, not the hurt inner child of circuit 2, or the anxious inner child of circuit 1, but like the sacred inner child come out and play. And just be in the moment. Like children, when they play, they're just in the here and now. There's no future planning, there's no past, it's just like the immersion in the moment of play. When we're not connected to our circuit 5, usually it's where we feel like in low energy or we have all these kinds of addictions. When we overdo it in circuit 5 is when we start drifting, you know, smoke enough pot. Yeah, marijuana is one of the drugs here. You smoke enough pot, you're like, hey man, I'm always going with the flow, you know, it's like, oh, here and now, and everything's fine, and I forget to go to work, and I don't know how to pay my rent anymore. Shit, circuit 1 stuff coming back in, yeah. Or ecstasy, MDMA, and usually also body endorphins like hugging, yeah, you know, get good hugs, you know, get like 23-second hugs. Kick in those endorphins, just feel good. Deep breath. So when you start like activating circuit 5, what can happen in this absorptive phase, we're like, oh, we start like totally falling into our senses and just like enjoying the pleasure of direct bodily experience, going to temple nights and playing with other bodies. And it's kind of like a self and sensory immersion, like really immerse in the senses, but it can also lead to kind of like a self-absorption, because then the only thing that becomes important if you're like over-focused on circuit 5 is your own direct experience. You don't care about society and rules anymore, you don't care about stories and beliefs, you don't care about like what emotional shit from other people, fuck that, I just want to feel pleasure, yeah. An integrated circuit 5 would then be somebody that is like in really embodied presence, that is like very in tune to his body, very aware with his body, and can start going through life with a path of non-resistance, like following the flow, following the impulses, feeling like when do you feel in your body that there's something, some attraction, and where do you feel there's resistance, and then go with that, and then like just like move out of your own fucking way, usually. And when you're going to the transmission phase is when you can start having actually charismatic agency, like you're so embodied, you're so present with yourself and your body that you emanate this kind of charisma that enthralls other people. And this is where it gets like tricky, right? Usually the gurus, a lot of like gurus and star, have this kind of like circuit 5 charisma. And then what happens? We talked about transmitting safety from circuit 1, right? So charisma also has this effect on other bodies. If you have somebody with a very charismatic presence, like usual gurus have, what you feel in the presence of the guru is also an activation of circuit 5. You feel the pleasure, you feel the ecstasy, you feel the presence, right? But then the tricky bit is, if they don't teach you how to do that for yourself, and you think you can only get that from the guru, then you fall into the guru trap. So it's about knowing also everybody is able to activate this charisma in themselves. And transmission in its phase is also space holding, to actually hold that presence for somebody else, be the catalyst for a change or a process of change also in somebody else's body. Deep breath. Okay, circuit 6, then the neurohacking magician. This is like where the chaos magic comes in. Right? So neuroelectric, which means like Leary thought that the neuroelectricity of our brains also sends some signals that can be perceived by other nervous systems, right? So we don't need to go over the laryngeal circuit, but we can't actually transmit over the neuroelectric signals to other brains and they can perceive this. For Robert Anton Wilson, again, it was a meta-programming circuit. For Antero Ali, it's about the intuitive psychic intelligence, like sensing the things that are not perceptible by our circuitry observations. And it's the absence of self-investment or dogma. So like when we don't feel like so self-absorbed or self-important or dogmatic, we can open up to more possibilities. For me, it's the neurohacking magician. So this is about like navigating, and this is where like a lot of like also Peter Carl's advice in chaos magic comes in. It's like throw yourself into uncertainty zones, right? Throw yourself in situations of high uncertainty, and then your magic kind of gets activated. Because what happens? Your nervous system, if you go into uncertainty zones away from your circuit to security, your nervous system opens up to the most possibilities and tries to find new solutions. And then you see more possibilities than in the constricts of your dogmatic or your usual programming. So, but this can also be perceived like a shock. Now I think, this is a hypothesis, that most HDHD system wirings are systems that are already activated in circuit 6 because they crave that uncertainty zones, right? They thrive in that uncertainty zones. They thrive out of novelty. They constantly seek new things to learn, new things to experience. They constantly need that kick of the uncertainty to feel alive, right? Whereas that for many other neurotypical systems, it's a horror. It's a horror. I want things under control. I want things structured. I want that things like go on a planned way and I can plan ahead. Well, ADHD system kind of like thrive in this chaos, right? Of like freedom and relativity. So the features that open up here is what I call chaos engineering, right? So like out of the field of different possibilities that open up to you, you can't start picking the ones that actually you want to go for, right? And it starts being predetermined. You start losing that logical time structure and the field of possibility opens up. So this is also where the concept of reality tunnels come in. Like, it's like, okay, like, all right, so I'm not my body, I'm not my emotions, I'm not my mind, I'm not my social programming, so social identity. I'm not also just my sensory experience and my pleasure. I'm the operator of a complex nervous system. Yay! And if I change the programming of the previous systems, if I start meddling with the program of the previous system, I can change my experience of reality. And I can open up to more possibilities to actually play with. And this is what I mean with switching reality tunnels. You change your programming, you switch your reality tunnels, you switch your experience of reality, whole new game, right? And also it's like where all the, I call it like all the psychic circus comes in, so like this more paranormal abilities to read other brains, read the energy field, something like that. Usually, this gets accessed, or usually it's, let's say like in times before we had the mind-altering drugs of LSD available to everyone, and mescaline and psilocybin. This circuit would get activated through esoteric ritual initiations. So magical orders, esoteric societies, yoga, like the more esoteric yoga paths. And what happens usually is that there's a long process of preparation of the body, of the emotional system, of the mind, embedded in a social structure. And then you get delivered initiatory shocks. Initiation rituals are usually an experience that shocks your system out of the previous reality configuration and creates that opening where you need to find new solutions. And that's where you get initiated into the magic. Can also be through brain pleasure induced by the substances, right? So catalyst could be what people call like the Kundalini awakening, the awakening of the energetic body. And some people are not prepared for that, and it happens and you land in some psychotic state again because your nervous system gets completely dysregulated. And this is the danger a little bit I see, and why I want to spread the knowledge of this model. As more of the substances become available, but people are not prepared for in a physical, emotional, mental, and social way to deal with these initiatory experiences and to be embedded in a system that helps them integrate this experience, then we could experience a lot of dysregulated people, a lot of people that will be like thrown into chaos in their own system and have a hard time finding back into homeostasis. So now like another new order. This can be also a higher sensitivity to light and energy patterns, and this is what a lot of autistic people report, right? That they have a higher sensitivity to sensory experience as well. And then the realization of being a multidimensional self, right? In the sense of like all the circuits have an influence over my perception of reality, and sometimes I'm more in circuit 6, but sometimes I'm more in my mind, and sometimes I'm more in tune with my emotions, sometimes I'm more in tune with my body. But all of that makes out my experience, and there is more to myself, or it's the multidimensionality. And when we're here in this balance, especially between circuit 2 and circuit 6, then there's a lot of mental health issues. So like this model explains most of the mental health afflictions as some form of spiritual emergency, as some form of like opening a circuit 6 channels without the proper grounding, without the proper integration, thus creating this balance in circuit 6 and circuit 2 and circuit 3. Because people cannot process and integrate the experiences, their reality gets kind of shattered, or the way their survival programming has led them so far gets shattered, and they don't have new strategies to actually cope. This could be also if you're not connected to your circuit 6, that you lose your sense of humor. And this is something that characterizes good magicians usually, that you have a sense of humor because they can laugh at the cosmic joke, especially when it's on them. And power loss, because usually if you're not tapped into the sense of like it's not like you can't create your reality, it's more that you're a co-creator of reality, right? Because there's other systems co-creating reality. You can't just like do whatever you want. Reality will respond also to what other people are creating and what other influences are part of the cosmic game. So yeah, when we fall into projections or a sense of like spiritual grandiosity as well, it's kind of like, okay, we've gotten too high without really grounding. Drugs are the serotonergic drugs, mescaline, psilocybin, LSD. Deep breath. So the absorption phase is when you start like tapping into these other signals. What you could call your intuition, or like channeling, receiving downloads, receiving some certain signals that are usually not perceived by the senses or by the mind, all the clear sensing, the extrasensory experiencing. The integration phase is when you unlock the ability of reality selection, so meta-programming, changing the programming of your system so that you can perceive reality in a different way, and then you can choose a channel, right? It's like, okay, I don't like this reality, fuck that shit, I'm gonna do something different. Berlin is a super nice city for doing that, for changing reality tunnels, right? If you decide you're done with a specific social structure, you just change social play fields, and you can see your reality align. You get a completely new different experience, new people, new places, and a whole new Berlin you haven't discovered. And the capacity of possibility engineering, meaning that out of the field of possible things that can actually happen and come true, you kind of like get a sense of, I can choose or I can influence that a certain possibility is more highly likely to happen. And this is how I perceive chaos magic. It's not like you can like manifest something out of thin air. It's more like a hacking of probabilities. And by using your intention and will and your energy and focusing that, you can make certain possibilities more likely to happen. And transmission would then be the psychic circus thing of like telepathy, communicating, and also like energetic healing. Deep breath. So chaos magic, gnosis, that would be the accessing of altered states of consciousness to actually hack new information into your system, right? And that's why I associate chaos magic with psychonautics as well. It's about exploring altered states of consciousness and exploring how to use those altered states of consciousness to alter your reality to create brain change for yourself. Chaos magic is all about direct experience, so it's not about what somebody else tells you to do or somebody else tells you how it works. It's about taking this mindset of being an explorer, of being an experimenter, and say like, okay, so like there's like this whole array of culturally available techniques to access different states of consciousness, to tamper with your mind. I'm just gonna experiment and see what works for me. So it's kind of like also finding your own spiritual path, instead of like walking the path someone else is teaching, finding your own maps, finding your own ways to decode reality and create experiences for yourself. It's a path of deconditioning. So the aim of the game would be like rewrite the survival strategies of your brain, rewrite that coping mechanisms, start to deprogram your brain using altered states of consciousness, using rituals, using symbols, using different techniques, but trying to like reprogram your brain and decondition yourself from all the programming you received while growing up. And then on the one side is the conditioning, on the other side is the meta-programming. So like you first deprogram the programs and then you hack in new programs to your accordance to make your reality experience more palpable to you and more fun. Because magic is also about having fun. It's a path of non-dogmatism, means that, yeah, even if I'm very passionate about this model, I'm not really dogmatic about this model. I'm aware that there's other models that also work as an interpretation of reality. And you can practice paradigm shifting. So at some point I will drop this model and play with something else as well. So it's like shifting in different ways of thinking, shifting different models of the world, and also being able to contradict yourself. Because yeah, maybe this year I'm all about the 800 brain model, and then next year I'll be all about, I don't know, whatever. And it's about developing technical excellence with what you do. So this is like also a stereotype. There's around chaos magicians, yeah, chaos magicians are the one wanking on sigils, you know, like masturbating and using sexual energy to manifest. And they just like slap like doodles in the plug and then they wank themselves off, and it's fast magic. No, not really if you take it seriously. It's about really developing what works for you and going with this explorer mindset to develop technical excellence in what you do. And the tool belt we have, again, Gnosis. So it's about entering different altered states, and you can do that by using ritual as a technology, as a tool. So ritual becomes something that's not sacred or holy communion or ancient, but it becomes a tool to achieve an altered state of consciousness, to reprogram your mind, to reprogram your nervous system. Or you can use altars as well to focus your energy, to represent, to bring out the semantic representations of your mind out into something palpable. It's about using belief as a tool, so understanding that there is power in belief actually, but you can switch beliefs however you want, as often as you change your underwear if it suits you, or you can go like deep into believing something. But where you put your belief in, you will put your energy on as well. And it's about using the power of imagination as well, because that's the thing, right? Everything that we can't imagine, we can't actually bring into material world as well. And everything that is in the material world and we have developed as technology or society or civilization was imagined first. So, like dare to imagine, because that's the power of creation. Imagination in accordance to will, and by using your emotions as energy that fuels that. So like your will, your emotions, energy, and imagination, that's where you tap into the magic. Sigils, altars, belief, rituals, just tools. Mere tools to play with. Deep breath. So this is where it starts getting very woo-woo. We have like the neurogenetic circuit, meaning like Leary thought of that we can have access to our genetic imprint, and kind of like the science of epigenetics is showing that actually we do have like some genes are activated and some genes are not activated, and there's a possibility to make changes in the way your gene sequence is activated or not activated. So there's a possibility to tamper with your neurogenetic imprinting. For Robert Anton Wilson was about more of the morphogenetic field, and Theo Ali is more about the mythopoetic genetic intelligence, so like actually accessing intelligence through myths, through the archetypes, and it's characterized by the absence of the dualistic mind. So we see the circuit 3, circuit 7 connection. For me, it's just like more discordant humor, the cosmic network connection, like accessing sources of intelligence that are out of your own system, more the cosmic sources of intelligence. And this is our states of unity, non-duality, interconnection that are usually hard for the mind to take. Usually the mind that's trained in a very rational, dualistic manner has difficulty explaining like the states of like, well, we're all one, and God, what, God? No, there's no God. Am I God? Am I part of God? What? The feature that opens up is thus like this evolutionary agencies, like taking, and this is again like the link to the epigenetic, like taking charge of your own evolution. And you could say like it's also about surfing synchronicities, so like really tapping into the network of synchronicities. So you can access that apparently through your DNA, you can access through invocations, like invoking higher sources of intelligence. Alchemy is usually also science of trying to tap into the source, or astrology as a language, not as a like, this is true because the planets say, but it's this is a language to interpret like the cosmic flow of things. And catalysts that activate us here are usually like encounter with muses, right? The artist that gets inspired, like kissed by the muse, and then suddenly falls into a state of trance and starts like painting and creating like a mad woman until the work is done, and then realizes this work was done through me. Also, the archetypes, different god forms, thought forms, or when we really, really, truly fall into deep listening and silence, we can also tap into the sources of intelligence, or those experiences of cosmic consciousness, or being Gaia consciousness, Earth consciousness. This balance characterized by overthinking, paranoia, hyper-materialist outlook on the world, imagination death. Yeah, very tragic. Not connected to circuit 7 or not able to imagine anything. Or feeling alienated, like, you know, like, it's like I don't really belong on this planet. It's like weird. It's like I'm a starseed. I don't belong here. Insanity, also possible. And it's accessed through higher doses, heroic doses of LSD or psilocybin, and also DMT, according to Leary. Deep breath. Rounds through. So absorb would be like, okay, kind of like make invocations, call in on spirits, call in on gods, call in highest sources of intelligence. But you can also like receive the downloads, right? Wherever the fuck they come from. I don't know where the downloads come from. I don't know, it's like Akashic records, is it God, is it spirit? But sometimes we do receive downloads, right? It's like a source of inspiration, somebody that hits you, and then there's like, I need to create a light bulb. Out of nothing, suddenly the inspiration to create a light bulb. And it was two guys at the same time, different places of the planet. We both received a download to create a light bulb. It happens. Integration is finding a way to talk about these experiences in your own mythopoetic language. So it's about using symbols, about creating narratives, about tapping into mythology to create explanations, right? And there's like, we have the founding of religions as well. Now a guy has this like experience of oneness of God and comes back like shit and starts telling a story, and then people go like, yeah man, that makes sense what this dude's saying, like he's tapped into God, let's follow him, right? Other people have this kind of experiences and they come back and they can't make up a coherent story about their experiences, and everybody's like, let's put them on antipsychotics and lock them up because they're dangerous, right? Especially here in the West, we do that a lot. Like people that come and like come back and like make not real good sense out of their experiences, we lock them up. We put them on antipsychotics. Finito. In other shamanic cultures, people go like, wow, okay, this dude is tapped in and he's not getting it really. Let's take him to a shaman because he needs proper training so he can like actually like make sense of his experience of out of world, and then with the proper training then he can access that and bring us the good, right? Or what do the Indian people do with their yogis and their holy men? They're all kind of considered a little bit of crazy. And what they do, they also make sure their survival food are met, that they have food and that they have clothes, and it's like, okay, they're a little bit weird, but they're also tapped into something, so we better help them survive, so we can like access the divinity they're tapped into, and that's awesome, right? And what do we do in the West? Like, lock them up, please, they're dangerous, they're not making sense. So if you're good at this vertical connection between circuit 7 and circuit 3, that's where you get to be really creative and create science, create new theories, be inspired, create art, create philosophy, you know, like make something that has an impact on the world. That's a good and healthy C3 and 2C7 connection. Deep breath. Now circuit 8 very short because, to be honest, the theory of that like surpasses the limits of my own C3 capacity to understand, because it goes into like quantum blah blah foam, non-local, neuroatomic, neurolocal, non-quantum, whatever. I find Antero Ali's approach here more approachable in the sense of like its axis of ego identification. So it's like where we have these ego death experiences or ego dissolution experiences. I see it as a circuit of like radical transformation, because once we get to these experiences, we detach from the usual programming and we get to create something new. We get to like mold our system. So the shocks are death, impermanence, any kind of like things endings in our life usually shock us out of the like trot of everyday brain programming, and we need to cope somehow, and we need to find new strategies. We'll be bereaved maybe by grief for a while, by the pain of loss, but then our system kind of like finds into a new configuration, right? the feature that can be accessed here is like what I would call like dreaming reality, right? So like accessing the dream states and realizing that if we're like half time awake, half time asleep, but we can't manage like kind of like bringing the dream world and the real world kind of together, we can access the power of dreaming ourselves awake, dreaming or into reality, making our dreams come real, or all the kind of like spiritual transcendence experiences. So this kind of like experiences of non-locality means our consciousness is somewhere else than our body is. So it's like this, usually this friction of consciousness and body. And catalysts of this kind of activation are all kinds of near-death experiences, lucid dreaming experiences where you like suddenly can't fly, or astral projection, astral travel experiences, out-of-body experiences. And what I find interesting, it's also, okay, like, when we're disbalanced here, right? When we kind of like have access to this out-of-body experiences and kind of like this journey of being out of the body, or taking too many DMT trips, and kind of like feel alienated from our bodies, like disconnected from our social reality, right? A lot of those people around us feel really like an alien on the planet. I feel like they don't belong on this planet anymore. And kind of like want to go out, take another trip out of the planet, another trip out of the planet, another trip out of the planet. So it's important once we have this like ego dissolutions and these connections from our nervous system, from reduced reprogramming, to also like integrate with community, right? To remember who we are, to remember why we came to this planet and why we're here on this planet, and that we can actually create on this planet, and don't fall into this trap of like, this planet is a hellhole for our souls imprisoned and suffering. So it's also like a narrative that can keep you there in a loop. It can mean identity collapse. I don't know who I am anymore. But it also can mean if we're not connected to circuit 8, to spiritual experiences, that we're like a social butterfly, always needing to socialize, always from one to another, to one to another. And we can't stand being alone because we can't stand feeling the void inside of us. Or we fall into this like herd mentalities or a loss of individuality, over moralizing. So this is like, circuit 8 is more like kind of like the spiritual essence, non-local essence that hangs on in consciousness even after disconnection from the body. So it would be absorption, something like experiences of void, near-death experiences, uncertainty, high uncertainty zones experiences, that we absorb this shock. And if we can't manage to integrate that, then we unlock the abilities of lucid dreaming, astral projection, shape-shifting, meaning that we can't actually like create our identities or create a set of different social identities to play with. So in one setting we show up as one person, in another setting we show up different, and we kind of like become more the role player in this kind of like massive multiplayer reality game show, and we can't start like choosing the games we want to play with, and then put different costumes and different hats, and we can't learn the social codes of all the game worlds and just like be more creative with that. And it's also what usually is being called like the crossing of the abyss. So once you go on that other side, once you make the disconnection, when you take the leap into the uncertainty and come back, then you unlock this ability. And the transmission phase, that would be like what the Zen monks are after, right? Be a nobody, live without a self-image, live without an identity, just be a fucking nobody. That's not important at all in this world, that is just is. Or what Peter Carroll would say, the pure vortex of pure potential. So in the sense, if you're a nobody, you can be anything as well. Deep breath. So I hope this made a little bit sense to you, right? If we look back again, circuit 1 and circuit 5, it's about the body, safety and ecstasy. Circuit 6 and Circuit 2, it's about like how well are you grounded in your sense of self? How well can you control your own, or know what you control and what not? And if you know what's in your control and what's not, you can't like lean into more uncertainty as well without losing your shit. But if you want to have everything under control and things get uncertain, well, you're most certainly going to lose your shit. How well can your mind be flexible with their narratives, with the paradigms, to incorporate different mystical experiences? And how well can you be grounded in community to actually integrate those very alienating, out of space experiences that keep you with a sense of purpose in this world? Yeah, go out there, make the experiences, but then come back with the goods and do something on this planet. And last and not least, this quote, I leave you with this quote from Tero Ali. To see chaos as an evolutionary agent. So it's about implementing inside shocks that can encourage more ego flexibility to help us navigate the influx of greater forces catalyzed by outside shocks. So life will always give you outside shocks, right? Playing with chaos means you create your own little shocks to shock your system out of the conformity of your programming and force it to find new adaptations and new solutions to kind of like evolve. Any state that triggers an experience of chaos tends to get our full attention. Our nervous system goes like, okay, solutions to survive, needed. So chaos, that's why chaos acts as an evolutionary trigger that dilates perception to the naturally incomprehensible complexity. Usually what our brain seeks to do is reduce complexity, but states of chaos allow us to like, okay, let's take in more complexity. The chaos of the brain itself. So chaos accelerates perception of uncertainty by temporarily breaking down mental fixation and certitudes, right? You play a little bit of disorder, get the people out of their ruts, and then your creativity can come in. All of the states offer fluent opportunities for shifting to higher levels of functioning. So it's like you have an ordinary system, you bring in chaos, chaotic, but then you can reconfigure into a new way of functioning, finding new homeostasis, thus up-leveling your humaning skills. And if that's what we want, because a lot of people are like, chaos, oh God, help me, chaos, it's not good. But if you like actually seek it out as an opportunity, and that's what you want, and intentionally bring in a little bit of chaos into your life, then you can get your system to respond, and then you can get your system to level up. It's not the shock that is important, but how we respond to this shock that dictates what happens next. And it's the same with trauma, right? Trauma is a shock. And for some people, they absorb the shock, they readapt, they go on. Some people cannot respond to the shock, cannot readapt, and they stay in a trauma loop. So it's about the responsibility and the flexibility again of the ego, that which allows us to place with chaos as a force of evolution. Deep fucking breath. Thank you for listening. That's the end of the transition.
Here's the mic if somebody needs.
Excellent presentation. Can you provide the slides, maybe the video that you took?
I hope the video is good, and I will share the video. And yes, I can't share the slides as well in the channel. Exactly. I also have printed out a list, so if you're interested in receiving more material around this, for example, the printouts of the posters over there, or you want to make sure you receive the slide deck, leave me your email there. It contains consent for you to receive emails from me to get more about this material, so make use of it wisely. Yeah.
Relevant to add or something.
Yeah, thank you so much. There was definitely an informational one.
It's intended.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like as you mentioned, like the last evolution kind of thingy. Like 2 weeks ago, I was smoking 5 minute tea, and I can completely correlate to that. Like it's actually a process of dying, and you get in this kind of other state that you, when you come back, take some stuff with you. So definitely, like this whole concept gave me a lot of answers to like actually what happened to me there. Yeah. And I have a question about do you know Canvilla, and how would you correlate all of this to the spiral dynamics?
I know about Ken Wilber and about spiral dynamics. I have not in-depth geeked on this model. When I first heard of it, I found there's definitely correlations, right? The different stages he describes can be described also by the different circuits. I think the difference in Wilber's model and this model is that it's just like, yeah, there's like different stages in how humanity has evolved as a collective and the different stages it goes through that correlate with this personal development circuits as well. And there is, in Wilber's theory, there's like, okay, you advance to a higher state and you see things from a different perspective, and there's still like lingering aspects of the consciousness of the previous states as well in your system. I find this system more flexible because it's not about, it's like linear or spiral evolution into one, but it's like, as I represented it on the chaos star, it means there's not a hierarchy. All levels of your system serve a function, all of them. Even the biosurvival, the most ancient one, it serves a fucking function, because even though there's not much tigers running around, there's still danger in this world for our biosurvival. So we need to have them, and it's not like we look at, oh, it's like ancient evolution to be overcome, kind of like thing linger. And it's like all of them have a function in our nervous system, and all of them have needs, and if we meet the needs and we befriend our nervous system, we can function better. And sometimes we're more in this state of awareness, and sometimes we're more in this state of awareness, sometimes we're operating more in the social game, sometimes we're operating more in the somatic circuit. So it's like, there's like always the possibility to shift from one state of awareness into another, and it's not hierarchical, and that's what I like about this model, because it's not just like, it's like, oh, there's evolution there. No, you have to take the whole of the system with you.
Nice, thanks.
Hi, thank you very much for this talk. And just really quick, I don't want to go to discussion about spiral dynamics, but it does emphasize that there's no hierarchy between the stages. Each stage is equally important to get integrated, just as a side note.
Okay, I will look at it with a new perspective. I have judged it so quickly, maybe.
Carousel over there.
Hey, it's always really nice hearing you talk about chaos stuff. I just had a question about how these triggers, or the drugs that trigger activity in a certain circuit, can be looked in light of the rest of Leary's literature, especially like set and setting. So how would you say, like, you see that, for example, Peter Horvath talks about like these triggers being slightly different from the ones that you explained, and you yourself put in cacao into a particular circuit. So do you think a spectrum model that integrates perhaps set and setting, where you take these certain substances, but in a certain environmental setting, in a certain internal chemical setting, you trigger a certain circuit, and that moves this. It also fits the same kind of transition we see in like psychology and neuroscience of moving away from strict classifications to more of a spectrum. So do you think that's something that's compatible with this 8-circuit model?
Absolutely, because the map's not the territory, right? As I said, it's only an analytical category, and each analytical category is a creation of our C3 programming, right? So it's like a way we make distinctions, and it's just a way to kind of like make a distinction between this and this. Leary himself, he said like, okay, where do you draw the line between circuit 6 and circuit 7 experiences? It's difficult, and at some point they just make like an analytical decision to have it this way and not the other way, right? So it's a little bit, the categories are a little bit arbitrary, but it helps our C3 mind to kind of like understand what we're talking about, so it's just like a point of relation to the experiences. I would say the setting, well, the set is the psychological configuration from circuit 1 to circuit 4 with which we're working, so with the programming with which you enter the experience. And of course, every one of us is wired differently in those circuits. So even if you have the same substance and administrated to different people, they will have different experiences because it will catalyze a different disorder in their programming, so that the experience will be different. On the same thing with the setting, right? And there is where I say like, there you can get, as a magician, you can get more intentional in creating a setting. How do you create the ritual? What meaning do you construct into your ritual? What aesthetic do you create in your space so that you have a different sensory experience, so that your body relates differently to the space? Which other individuals are you inviting to your experience? How do they color then your experience? So this is where you as a magician curate the setting depending on what kind of experience you want to have, with more intentionality, taking care of your body, making sure you're in a well-regulated emotional state before you enter the experience, creating the meaning, creating the aesthetic pleasing environment, making sure that your needs are met, curating the social environment for your trip. That's where you can influence the effect the substance will have on your system.
Anybody else? Have a question? No? I think we can move.
Well, if there's no more questions about this topic, what do you know about the League of Spiritual Discovery?
The what?
The League of Spiritual Discovery?
Nothing.
Okay.
Never heard of it before.
Another question, because you said like about the wiring in the brain, or like how we can rewire, and I would be curious if you have some knowledge about like the personal traits of high sensitivity, high intelligence, or like there is many kind of characteristics throughout humanity, which I believe is that when we come to Earth, naturally our brains are like wired differently.
Yeah.
And so like I would love to have your point about that, like the archetypical, you know.
Yeah, I do think that there's like, I mean, we have huge neurodiversity, right? I think this model makes it easier to look at neurodiversity in the sense of like, okay, how does different imprinting, right, different ways of raising our children create different wiring? How does different cultural programming create different wiring? How do different educational systems create different wirings? And then I do believe that some brains come already switched on in the higher circuits, while other brains don't, right? And I think a lot of autistic people or people on the spectrum, ADHD, autism, the usual neurodivergencies, I think, or that's my hypothesis, that they already come on with switched on circuit 5, circuit 6, and circuit 7 brains. And then a lot of the dysfunctionality that happens is rather created to trauma and rather created through them not having adequate maps when growing up to actually express their experience of the world. And the adversity that they face in the seeking of belonging and in the seeking of fitting in, and some more developmental trauma because parents, authorities, and educational systems are not equipped to handle those kind of brains, and they're constantly gaslit out of their experience. So this is something that I'm curious also to do further research. I have my wild hypothesis, but I would be like curious to geek out with some other people that are on the spectrum and how they experience to see if my hypotheses are valid in that sense. And I think that the drug revolution of the 60s also catalyzed a lot. I think that we're seeing more and more people switch on brains because of epigenetics, right? So like if the parents start switching on their brains on the circuits, and then they also transmit to the new generations this switched onness, so to say. That we're having more and more people that are actually already not needing the substances to catalyze and to switch on. And this is what Leary tried kind of like to describe, that the substances are evolutionary agents because they further human evolution. And even though maybe like if your parents already partook on the substances and the kids already come on with different wired and more switched on brains and having different experiences, and this is accelerating, and the more these drugs become available, the more it will be accelerating as well.
Nice. Let's do it.
That's why I'm on Team Leary. We just need to find like good systems, good rituals, good ways to integrate, good maps, so that people can make sense of their experiences and not get dysregulated for too long. I think it's dangerous to just like make it available without any education, without any frameworks, without any systems. But if we have the systems in place and the frameworks in place, we can help accelerate human evolution. I truly believe that.
But we have to make children for that.
Yes, reproduce.
Is this a play temple now?
Well, but I do want to extend two more invitations. One next weekend on Saturday, I want to invite you here back in the space to have like a 6-hour ritual playground. Yeah, so we'll be like exploring the different circuits, but with the para-theater rituals and with chaos magical rituals, and not so much theory, just like give a like super quick like, oh, these are the circuits, and then we're going to play with ritual technology to experience that. And for those who want to dive like super deep to geek out on this and experience how these exercises, rituals and stuff can create brain change and recalibrate your system, I have a 10 weeks program coming up starting March 21st with the equinox. So if you're interested in that and really taking this into a deep level, put your email down, you'll receive more information, you'll receive the invite to play with this material and these exercises and rituals to create change in your system.
Do we use drugs in those rituals?
No.
Like,
I had a participant in the last course, like I don't encourage drug use, I want you to encourage to experiment, do the experiments, do the rituals, try to tune in to the natural sensitivity of your nervous system with these experiments. But I had one participant that took it like, okay, it's like a 9-week program, I need to take all the drugs in order. So he took like all the drugs in the order of the circuits like for 9 weeks. I would say he's like a very experienced psychonaut and he did very well, but I would not recommend that. All right. Thank you. I hope, just Take your time to integrate this. It's a lot of information. It's intended to overwhelm you a little bit. That's why but I put in the breathing, so you have like a little bit of integration time. And just like soak it in, leave me your email, you get the slides, and there's a possibility to go deeper if you want and to go experiential if you want. The microphone is about to die. Good timing.
Perfect. And if anybody sneaked by me and didn't pay, I can still want to. I'm here and willing to pay the money.